Hey everybody, good morning or good afternoon, depending when you're watching this. I'm not entirely sure when the presentation is. My name's Glenn Malcolm, in case we've not met, and this is the first time that you meet me on a screen. Good morning. I work with Brian, Bangkok Partner, and I am the cross-campus advisor for technology. Recently, I went to the AI and Future of Education conference at Verso on November the 1st to November the 3rd. This included a pre-conference with a guy called John Nash. And what I've done is I've collected all the notes and presentations that were if you were a presenter there, then you were able to access all the presentations. And so they're all searchable, all the links in there are searchable. And so on the pre-conference, with John Nash, I have collected a series of pages that he pushed out, and just I've organised this into sort of headers and whatnot all the way through. And the thrust was pretty much, as I've got this picture here, was ethics in AI, what should be done, when should we be using AI, when should we not be using AI. The general premise was, across most of the schools that were there, was that you should be augmenting your practice in any way you can, and those who do are going to be excelling, and those who don't will be sort of stagnating. It is the top and tail of it. It's quite abrupt. So they were saying that when you should be using AI is when it's human first, so the creativity comes from the human, and then you augment those ideas and you hone those ideas with an assistant, which I'll come to in a second. So there's about 5 main areas with this topic, and there are 5 sort of key elements with this whole sort of conference. And the ethics side of it was, should you be assessing student work? Well, yes, you can, but then you need a human eye to go over it and make sure that it matches your students, that it matches the grades that you run a keen eye and a critical eye over it, in terms of critical use, when you're using too much of it, when you're using not enough of it, and which stakeholders should be involved in this. Well, John Nash points to pretty much every single stakeholder in school and the whole community. Make sure that the communication reaches those parts of the community, and that goes for students, teachers, ancillary and auxiliary staff, as well as the parents. It's very thorough, and he talks about this thing called jobs to be done, or it's kind of get things done. It's a roundabout way of getting things done. And jobs to be done, questions, and how you question things, and how you question events and times, and the time scales of things. It's very thorough. You can see that it's very text heavy. The whole day was very text heavy, but very thorough nonetheless. All the way through here as well. Anytime that someone mentioned an author or a book, I went and got a copy or a PDF or an EPUB sometimes in here, so you can go and grab the books as well as I go through here. Several days, including all the resources. Sorry, Dion, if you're here today and you see the first one. Sorry, Dion. But there are all the pages in here from the 21st Century Learning page, including all of the presentations from all the presenters in here. They're all searchable. Lots and lots of links in there for you. And I'll only stick with one day here. I won't go into both of them. Because I'm going to go into the next bit here, which is AI as beginners, or beginner AIs. This is where a guy called Greg Clinton, some of you may know this guy, and he presented something called AI as Jetpack. Many links in here, and the main thrust of that was that, can you create a computer game for primary age students to teach them a particular skill? And most people who were there weren't coders, but it meant that you had to be vulnerable in terms of where you stood on this sort of journey to be able to go and create a fully fledged game. And so this meant that you put yourself in the shoes of someone who was, those people who you work with who kind of, they see a barrier and then they kind of go, oh, I can't do this. Whereas with AI and an AI assistant, which I'm going to come to in a second, is that you can't do that anymore, really. There's no sort of room for you to say, or room for anyone to say, well, I don't really understand that. Well, you can just say, I don't understand that, I don't understand this, and I don't understand this context. Explain it to me like I'm 5 years old. Give it to me in a picture, draw a picture for me, create a visual. Give me a link that I can go to where I can learn about this as a child, as a learner, as a beginner, and then build it up. And what he forced us to do in this hour and a half, in this hour that he had in the afternoon, was that he used this idea from Ethan Mollick's Impossible Assignment, where you don't really know the answer, but you've got to go and discover the answer yourself and go on this journey, go and create something. And so it's a kind of a revelatory moment that it wasn't just what's happening at our school, but when you go to and see these other schools, you realise that this Wild West kind of is being relatively tamed, with quite a few sort of familiar sort of routes that people are taking along the way. One of the routes along the way was that we should be encouraging our staff to be thinking about creating their own bots. Now, you may have just seen a page flash up on this side, which is the John Hattie bot, which I've just sent through to my colleagues in the primary school this morning, and that is being able to use a bot and interrogate that bot and have that bot be a person and have a persona in order to guide you to guide you along with your craft. Are you creating resources for students? What kind of resources do you need? Planning? Do you need resources? Do you need ideas? Do you need to go and flesh it out? Do you need someone who's going to read it through and be the student? And what questions are going to be thrown back at you if you put this into a lesson? Having these AI assistants means you're going to be having many AI assistants. You're going to have a whole crew of AI assistants along the way, if you don't already. But something that Brian and I have been talking about recently, and something that came up at this conference as well, was the idea of agents. That when you are using many of these bots and you're using many of these repetitive scenarios throughout the week, now is the time to be really sort of thinking, I need an agent to go and automate all these ideas. Time triggers, space and space triggers, place triggers. So when these triggers happen, you can go and call on these bots to go and do these jobs for you, and there you have this sort of, you have this legion of bots and agents. That seems to be the next sort of step that a lot of schools were talking about. So this Ethan Mollick's Impossible Assignment came from Ethan Mollick himself, and this is his Substack, One Useful Thing, and it's well written in everyday language. There's a little bit of jargon, but it's just well thought out ideas in terms of how AI is and LLMs are impacting us as teachers, as students, as humans basically. This is his book, Co-Intelligence: Living and Working with AI. This book is excellent. It's well paced out. It's got the same flavors as going on here, and it's just easy to read, and it's just got some great ideas in there. One last thing I'll leave on is a guy called Ryan Tenenbaum. In his session, he was talking about how fallible AI is, especially if you're sort of relying on this to go and use it as an assessment tool. His premise was that when you pasted in sort of a student's piece of writing, you pasted it in verbatim, and any sort of things that are any errant, that just don't look particularly errant, they just look like a piece of writing and space between your paragraphs, that white space just looks harmless, but actually it isn't. And he's got this provable sort of this test that he runs, where any white space can give you a wildly different grades according to whatever criteria you're adding. If you repeat this criteria and remove sort of arbitrary spaces, such as the gaps between paragraphs, you can have wildly different results. And this goes down to sort of nouns that are used. So if you have a boy and his name is Eric and he lives in Paris, you can have wildly different results if you have the same story but you have a different person in a different place. So let's say you have Erica who lives in Madrid and she rides a red bicycle but Eric rides a blue bicycle. You can have really different results in terms of how it's graded. The temperature he was showing us, that the temperature of the reading and the words and how the frequency of the prediction of the words and the letters that follow it affect the rest of the grading. It's quite wild. And what he's calling for is schools to think about how you're going to have a framework of guides and rules as to how you're going to use these LLMs. And I think he's on the money, to be honest, on this. He's got repeatable tests that just show the same thing over and over again of how fallible the AI and LLMs are for us as assessment tools. Right, that's it. That's quite a long time. That's 10 minutes. Have a great day, everybody. Goodbye.